where did you get the idea for this film, and what made you want to make this film?
Well, I mean, if you watch the film and you're a film fan or film buff, I think you can kind of see the latent, homage to, Italian cinema, specifically Fellini. I was a kid that just devoured cinema when I was young. All the kids were playing baseball and stuff in the neighborhood, and I had a copy of whatever film I could get from European cinema at the library, or I stayed up late nights like watching HBO and Showtime for all kinds of alternative cinema, and so it's definitely my thing. But I loved European cinema, and I have a real affection for Fellini, and so I think that's part of the kernel or the interest in the film. But we also had some real life shakeups before the film began, and that was an influence too. And we had lost a family member, and we were all sort of struggling with it. And so this became a real family production.
What point did you decide that you wanted to kind of deal with that through film and making something together with your family?
Well, I think first of all, I think my son has this kind of like innate ability to entertain folks, and so we always played around with like little cinema projects and stuff at home. And my background's in kind of alternative filmmaking and documentary, and so I've never really approached a movie like this, kind of like a traditional storyline with characters and whatnot. I've done some things here and there, but this is a little bit unusual for me as a filmmaker. And so I wanted to kind of say showcase his talents, but also in the wake of that kind of disruption, let's say, there was kind of an angst. There was something that I felt that needed to be articulated to the family, and also sort of translate that into more of a universal story. And I think that's what Fellini was great about. If you think about 8.5, the original film, he was really talking to himself in that movie. He was trying to come to terms with like, maybe the film that I make isn't going to be great, or maybe, this isn't as good as I want it to be, or should I stop doing this? All these existential questions, right? But he lets it happen in the space of the filmmaking. And that's what I love so much about it. And so I think that I kind of took his lead, and I used the film, and I cast my son and my father in the movie. And I kind of just had them on screen together. I let them interact. We did a lot of improvisation, and we had that storyline all the way throughout. But I wanted it to be kind of like a healing experience for all of us, I think. And I think when you are firing on all cylinders, and we really felt good about the movie once we got it completed, it felt like that. It felt like it was a working through process, as opposed to let's entertain people, or let's make something that makes us a lot of money or something like that. This was more about using the art to kind of get us in a better place, and deal with some anxieties and frustrations and fears, and turn it into something I think is kind of beautiful.
Yeah. And I think even though you were making kind of a personal and small film, like you still seem to like elevate it through some choices. Does your son speak Italian? Did he have to learn Italian for this? Or?
What we did was I scripted it, and then I translated it. I had some ideas of showing him doing the translation, but obviously the character in the film, loves Fellini. He's got his, collection of Fellini pictures on the wall. And there's this kind of like underlying story that, maybe a family member had got him into it. And so, that was definitely the reason for the Italian. And I also like the idea that anybody who speaks Italian probably caught a lot of his missteps, which I kind of found humorous, to think about a small boy kind of like trying to script a letter to Fellini, making a lot of mistakes, but wanting it to be in Italian because that was his language. And so I think that was just sort of like a small internal joke, but I think it needed to be there because, you always have these kind of great voiceovers in a lot of European cinema. And I thought he did a great job with the language. We shot the film, and then it took a while. It was sort of quote unquote in the can. And so he got a little bit older in that process. How kids sprout up, they're different, like within, 6 months, they're a different human being. And so I actually had to change the pitch of his voice to do the voiceover because it didn't necessarily match up with the little boy that you see on the screen. But the primary thing that he did with us obviously is the filming, and he was pretty distracted. It was hard. I mean, I think it's hard with adults, right, to kind of keep them focused and, you know, keep them on point when you're shooting as a director, but kids are tough. And so, but he got into it, I think, and he was sort of enjoying the process. And then the voiceover thing, it was kind of a magical, you know, couple of days where we went through, you know, the script together, and he had to do his takes. I mean, it was ADR, right? Like it was just sort of like this dialogue thing that we had to go through. And, you know, and it was like, it was a great thing. I think we'll both think about for the rest of our lives, like trying to get the soundtrack down and get the voiceover down. After that, he was done with it. Like he wanted nothing to do with the editing. He was like super disinterested until his ears kind of like perked up when he said, "Oh, we're in a film festival. That's interesting." He likes that part.
You mentioned that you kind of finished it during COVID era when all the festivals had kind of shut down. What was it like just to show this film to the people involved in it?
It was great. I mean, my wife, who you had mentioned, like she's in the film too. It was a real family affair. She's the one that's actually doing the editing with Austin, and our cat too, if you see him. You know, and you know, normally she'd laugh. I would say this to her face. Like she's not so excited about my work, right? Like the documentary stuff she can handle. Sometimes I do some crazy art stuff and she's like, just, you know, leave it alone, Shawn, go away. Not super interested in that stuff. But with this one, she cried. And I think not because it was her kid and her husband and all that stuff. I mean, I think that's probably part of it, but she said this story is just floored me, you know, and she's a great litmus test for me because she has kind of a broader perspective when it comes to movie watching. I'm a bit of a snob. I hate to admit it, but you know, I'm like the European cinema guy, you know, I'm always kind of arguing for like the art and the artistry and all that stuff. And so anyway, I think that if Sarah enjoyed it, I felt like, wow, this is going to be, I think I'm going to get some receptive audiences because she was really into it. And of course, you know, Austin, he didn't want to admit that he enjoyed it, but I think he enjoyed it a lot. My dad too, he was pretty impressed. He felt a little foolish. I think it was hard a couple of times. I think he kind of like winced when I put him in some like uncomfortable positions, but you know, I've been doing this with my dad since I was a kid. The first video camera I had, like he was the first actor that would do it. So that's another reason why it was important to me, is that it was reminding myself that like family is really important and they're a part of your career, you know. And so we really did enjoy it as a family getting a chance to watch it, and it will be with us forever.